it's April from April's Home, and today I'm here to share with you my recipe for turkey vegetable soup. If you've been watching my recent videos, you may have seen that I prepared a low-carb Thanksgiving dinner. Today I thought I would share with you one of the things that I love to do with leftover turkey, and that is to make a turkey soup. Sometimes I just do a classic turkey soup with carrots, onions, celery, and a nice turkey broth, but today I thought I would do a turkey vegetable soup. And so to get started, we'll need to make the broth. So I have here in this container the carcass of the turkey. I've taken off all of the meat here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in some boiling water in just a minute, and I'll show you that. And then this is the celery that I have. Now I only have one bunch of celery, and I usually use a whole bunch of celery in my soup, but for the broth I'm going to go ahead and put in some of the ends and tops just to help with that soup's flavor. And then later on, when we're preparing the soup with the broth that we make, I'll add the rest of the celery after I get that sauteed up. I'm also going to add some salt and pepper, some Italian seasonings, and a bay leaf or two, a chopped up onion, and a couple or maybe 2 or 3 cloves of pressed garlic there. So that's what I'm going to be using to start out the broth. And when our broth is done, I'll come back and share with you how I turn that delicious turkey broth into a turkey vegetable soup using leftover turkey meat, chopped up, and some different veggies. But now let's go ahead and get started with our broth. So I've got a nice big soup pot heating up with some water. Now I'll go ahead and add to this water my turkey bones as well as the other veggies. I'll come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've put the turkey bones into the soup pot here. If I was using my really tall stock pot, I wouldn't have needed to break it up as much, but because I am using my regular soup pot, I did separate the bones a little bit so that they would fit in the soup pot nicely. I'll bring that up to a high simmer to make sure it's nice and hot and getting going, and then I'll turn that down to more of a medium to low simmer. Next, let's go ahead and add our veggies. We're going to go ahead and start with this celery and onion here. I've just done a real rough chop here because I will be straining out this broth. These will cook all day in the broth, and those will be strained out, so they don't need to be cut in like bite-sized pieces or anything. Here's the rest of my celery. You can see I've trimmed off the ends here. I'm not using this end stock here. I probably could have cut it a little bit lower. But I do like to trim the ends of my celery, and also I don't usually use these in the main soup, so I'm going to go ahead and put these into the broth for flavoring though, and later on we'll cut up the rest of this bunch of celery for our soup. So I'm going to go ahead and add these vegetables next, and then we'll add our garlic and seasonings. Okay, I've got all of the onions and celery in the soup, and now I'm going to go ahead and add some salt and pepper. I usually just do this to taste, just usually shake it in. This looks like probably about a little less than a teaspoon of pepper there, perhaps half a teaspoon to start with, and a little bit less than a teaspoon of salt there. I will be adding more though to this broth as I taste it as it gets going. I'm going to add some of my Italian seasonings, and again I just shake this in just over the top, just a nice little sprinkle there, and I'll stir that in a minute. I've taken off 3 cloves from my garlic here. I'll save the rest of that. I'll add a couple more to the finished soup there, and I've also got a couple of bay leaves here that I'll add. So we'll add our bay leaves there, and again I'll push these down in with a spoon here in just a minute. I've got a garlic press to press in my 3 cloves of garlic. We'll just press in that garlic there. Then using a nice big spoon, I'll kind of incorporate the spices down into the broth. You can see it's starting to heat up nicely, and again I'll bring this up to a solid simmer, then I'll turn that down to a medium-low simmer and put a lid on slightly off to the side so that it still has room for the steam to escape. So I'll go ahead and bring this up to a simmer, then I'll come back and show you the next step. So our soup is up to a high simmer here. I'm bringing this down to a medium-low simmer. Then I'm going to go ahead and cover it with my lid, and I'll cover it so that we're leaving a little gap there for the steam to escape. This will simmer for 3 to 4 hours. I like to get the broth nice and tasty and rich. I will check on this throughout the day. I'll film a few updates throughout the day as well so we can see how this broth is developing. So we're going to go ahead again, cook this for 3 to 4 hours on a nice low simmer. I do like to come back and make sure that it hasn't gotten too low. I do want it to be cooking nicely and getting all of that flavor out of the soup bones and the onion and celery in there, as well as all of the spices. When this broth is done, we will strain it and start our turkey soup. Okay, it's been about an hour and a half or so, and my turkey broth has been bubbling away. You can see it's starting to get a nice color there, a little bit of a nice broth color going on. The house smells absolutely wonderful with this broth bubbling away here. You can see it's kind of at a medium simmer there. I'm going to go ahead and pop the lid back on it and let it continue cooking for at least a couple more hours. Our broth has been cooking for a little over 3.5 hours now, and I think it is all ready to start our soup. You can see it has a nice broth color there. I've let the heat come down just a little bit because I will be straining it off here real soon. I'll use this strainer basket to strain it out, as well as a slotted spoon to remove as many of the bones and veggies as I can before I strain the soup. But before I do that, I'm going to start sauteing veggies. I've got out another soup pot here. You can strain the liquid into an alternative container and just clean this out or rinse this out and use it to make the soup in, but for the ease of it, I'm just going to go ahead and grab out my other soup pot here, and I'm going to start sauteing my veggies. I've chopped up the rest of my celery as well as a large onion. I'll be sauteing those in a little bit of olive oil. Normally I would also be chopping up some carrots, but sometimes to save time, I just use frozen crinkle cut carrots in my soup. It's a great time saver. They're already ready to go. So as soon as I saute up the onions and celery, I'll go ahead and add these in and saute them around as well. For the rest of this vegetable soup, I'll be adding in a bag of frozen mixed veggies and some organic kidney beans drained and rinsed. You can add other vegetables too if you'd like, but these are the vegetables I'm using today. Sometimes I add diced tomatoes, especially the Italian seasoned diced tomatoes. Today I won't be doing that. I would like just a more clear broth rather than having the tomato mixed in. So that is also an option. You can add tomato to this recipe and any other vegetables that you think you'd like. But today we're just going to be adding onion, celery, carrots, mixed veggies, and organic kidney beans. So now I'm going to go ahead and drizzle my pan with some olive oil and start cooking up my onions and celery. I also have a little bit of pan drippings left over from when I cooked the turkey. This is some nice rich broth down here as well as a thin layer of fat. I'll be adding some of this fat back into the soup, just a little bit, and the rest of this broth as well. You do not need to add this if you used up all of your pan drippings to make a larger batch of gravy than I did. I only used a couple cups of it and I had this left over. So I will also be adding this into the soup, and you can do the same if you have any other leftover stock from that turkey, as long as it's been strained through and it's a nice clear broth there, you can add that into the soup as well. My celery and onions are sauteing nicely. I'll go ahead and saute these until the onions start to become a bit translucent. Then I'll add my carrots. You can hear my celery and onions sauteing off to the side there. I've used this little strainer basket to go through this and remove as many of the bones and cooked vegetables as possible. When I pour this broth into the soup pan, I'll be pouring it through this strainer here to make sure that we didn't miss any small bones or little other bits of things that we don't want in our soup. We just want a nice cooked broth in our soup. And so we'll go ahead and strain that here in a minute when our veggies are finished sauteing. My onions were nice and starting to become translucent, so I went ahead and added my bag of frozen crinkle cut carrots to my soup here, and I'll continue sauteing those as well. Okay, now I'll go ahead and strain the broth and add it to my soup pot here. Okay, I've added the broth to the veggies. It just looks and smells beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and bring the temperature back up to a low simmer. I'm going to go ahead and let this cook for about half an hour just to give those veggies a head start. Then I'll add in my turkey as well as my mixed veggies and my drained and rinsed kidney beans. So I'll come back in about half an hour and show you the next step. And before I get this back up to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and add a few more seasonings. I'll go ahead and shake in a little bit more Italian seasoning, a little more salt, and of course I'll taste this here in a bit and make sure that the broth is flavorful and add in any other spices that I need to. I'll go ahead and add in a little bit of pepper as well. And I'll also be adding in a little bit more garlic towards the end of this cooking, so it's nice and freshly added. Okay, so the soup has been bubbling away for about half an hour now. It's got a nice head start, so I thought I would go ahead now and add my leftover turkey here. This is a little bit more than 3 cups or so of leftover turkey. You can use the leftover turkey that you have. I had a pretty good amount left over, so I'll be adding all of this to my soup. And next I'll be adding mixed veggies and the kidney beans. The turkey's added, and now I'm going to go ahead and add my mixed veggies. I'll bring our soup back up to a medium simmer, and I'll be draining and rinsing my kidney beans and adding that. And I'll also be adding another couple cloves of garlic. And I've added in my drained and rinsed kidney beans as well. I'm going to go ahead and give everything a stir here. In a minute, I'll go ahead and add my garlic as well. I'll bring this back up to a medium simmer and let this cook away for at least another hour until the veggies are all cooked through. Then I'll test the seasonings one more time and it should be ready. Our soup is done and ready to go. I've let this cook for an additional hour or so since I've added in my veggies and kidney beans. I added a little bit more salt, pepper, and Italian seasonings to get the flavor just right. And I'll be making up a bag of orzo to serve this over, as well as some cauliflower rice. My husband will enjoy this over orzo, and I'll enjoy this served over cauliflower rice. You can just eat this plain by itself, but if you like noodles, orzo or egg noodles are really good to serve this over, and I've been enjoying all my soups over cauliflower rice, a little bit of cauliflower rice. I don't add it into the soup. I cook it separately, put a little bit on the bottom of the bowl, and then ladle the soup over the top of it. So I'm going to go ahead now and serve up a bowl and give it a try. Here's my turkey vegetable soup all served up. Again, I've served that on a little bit of cauliflower rice that you can see there. But my husband will have his with orzo pasta. So now I'm going to go ahead and give this a try. Okay. This turkey vegetable soup turned out really nicely. The broth is very flavorful, and I love all the veggies and turkey meat in this soup as well. This is such a wonderful thing to do with your leftover turkey bones to make a beautiful broth, and use your leftover turkey meat to make a wonderful turkey soup. I hope you give this recipe a try. It's really easy and definitely a wonderful meal to serve during the fall. I think it's especially nice to have a nice soup like this with all the veggies and broth and turkey meat after all of the heavy foods that we tend to eat around Thanksgiving. Soup is such a nice thing to have this time of year, so I really enjoyed making this, and I hope you enjoyed hearing how I made this turkey vegetable soup. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.